Ultimately, our model of solidarity is based on a vision eloquently expressed in a poem immortalized during the 1912 Lawrence Mill Workers' strike in Massachusetts. This strike saw predominantly migrant women with no common spoken language come out against pay cuts with the suppression of women's work. The poem goes, "Hearts starve as well as bodies, give us bread, but give us roses."
While our 1 year anniversary is still a couple of months away, we introduced ourselves to one another a little over a year ago. On March 11th, we held our first meeting, and on April 10th, we had our first Zoom call during the pandemic, and officially we launched in the middle of May. We were unsure how long we were going to last as a group because we were precarious BIPOC scholars starting a mutual aid group in the midst of a pandemic. But here we are approaching this important milestone with several projects in development and more on the way. We want to talk now about the future of Sportula Europe and how we see it evolving over time. Last semester, we held a bi-weekly social for classicists of color, which was our first non-micro grant offering. Turnout was larger than we were anticipating, with scholars from all over the world coming over to network, ask for advice, rant, laugh, and talk about things in a safe space. It was the first time I myself had seen more than 2 people of color in a classic Zoom meeting. We have paused the socials in order to focus on a new networking project that is due to launch, a Discord server aimed at connecting marginalized scholars in a more permanent setting. One drawback of the social was scheduling it in between conflicting calendars and other Zoom socials that were all the rage in 2020. But a Discord gives us the chance to connect as a group, forge individual connections, have marked spaces for sensitive discussions, and create a tangible space to call our own that marginalized scholars often lack. Social media can be a hostile space, and even our personal networks are out there in the open for others to see. But we want to create a space within a space for marginalized scholars to collaborate. Our next project started over the holiday period and is still in its infancy, an artist collaboration project hosted on our Redbubble store. The original idea was to sell our designs as another way to fundraise, since all of the profit went into our microgrant pot and our supporters would get some custom merch in return. We appreciated, though, that a sizable part of our network may not be able to support us financially, so we started this initiative for artists to collaborate with us and sell their own designs on our shop, with the profit split 50-50 between them and our microgrant pot. Beyond financial academic support, we see several advantages of this scheme. Marginalized artists get to showcase their work without having to formally open their own shop, a process that requires time, and they can use our existing following to boost their own profile. It's also a different kind of donation. While we primarily rely on the financial goodwill of donators, an art collaboration is more community-focused and allows underprivileged scholars to work with us to provide mutual benefit. In the future, we want to build this even further, so we are actively looking for collaborators to take part in this scheme with the hope that we can raise the profile of marginalist artists in a way that supports them beyond the traditional donation to microgrant pathway. Through the rise of online exhibitions during COVID-19, we are also aiming to curate a digital showcase for these artists who may not have had an opportunity to display their work through traditional methods. Our most recent project is more pedagogical in nature, a blog dedicated to research, personal experiences, academic discussions, and think pieces. While the blog was added to our website from the beginning, it was only after the end of Eidolon that we fast-tracked it to the top of our priority list. Eidolon offered an official space, so to speak, for marginalized scholars to publish their work, many of whom were graduate students, and almost all of whom published pieces that wouldn't be found in more traditional journals. It was the first real space where classical discourses that often existed in the fringes of our field were spotlighted front and center, and its end has left a hole in opportunities for scholars looking for such a space again. We want our blog to continue in the spirit of Eidolon, publishing thought-provoking content and promoting open discussions on difficult topics. Our first piece, called Can the Instrumenta Domini Dismantle the Domus Domini, offers both, and we now have several pieces in the process of being published that continue along this vein, from posts on classics and queer history to classical reception in Beyoncé's music videos. It's also a chance for younger scholars to get their work out there and slowly enter the world of publishing in a gentle way. Sportula Europe aims to publish as many posts as we get pitched, and our editing process is light, offering constructive feedback, but still giving the writer autonomy. As Classics reaches the critical crossroads of its identity and existence, spaces like this are more important than ever to spotlight the next generation of classicists and allow senior scholars to informally engage with issues beyond their own areas of research. Of course, our main offering is the microgrant service, and we want that to grow over time. Having offered over 80 microgrants since our launch, we have fundraised enough to consider formally applying for non-profit status, which will in turn give us a stronger public profile and assure potential donors that we are in fact a legit mutual aid group, which is an issue that has arisen in the past. Financially, this status offers us various forms of tax relief, including the option of gift aid and access to certain sources of grant funding which are open only to organizations with charitable status. Beyond this, Sportula Europe having non-profit status gives us more chances to collaborate with other institutions and organizations, which, as one of the few permanent anti-racist mutual aid groups in Classics, we see as something of vital importance. We want to work closer with university departments, other student-led groups, and public research institutions. We want Sportula as an organization to grow in relation to our increased output. As mentioned, our 1-year anniversary is almost here, and we want to share some of our ideas on how we'll be celebrating. Up until now, we've been running as an anonymous collective unit, but we want to be more vocal about how our personal perspectives on the state of our fields interact, and we want to invite productive discussions about our aims and what we can offer. Our primary idea is to hold a roundtable discussion, potentially hosted by another BIPOC-led classics group, such as those already mentioned, and offer an event that is exclusively student and ECR focused to talk more about the work we've done. Alongside this, we want to run a fundraiser raffle to spotlight the artists we are working with, as well as other classicist creators. We decided to avoid the auction route for 2 reasons. First, as a group of students and ECRs, we don't want the majority of the offerings going to those who have the financial stability to outbid others. Second, we don't want to take part in events that have been known to have undertones of colonial looting, as previous classical auctions have been guilty of. Finally, we want to hold some social events to network, have fun, and discuss potential contemporary debates in the field today in an accessible and inclusive way, in the format of book clubs and in pub quizzes.
Like the Sportula before and alongside us, Sportula Europe aims to uplift and centre BIPOC, queer and otherwise marginalised students and early career or precarious scholars in mutual aid and solidarity. We aim to create communities that support such individuals to stay in the field if they wish to do so, as we believe that our disciplines can only survive by properly valuing diverse perspectives and experiences. But for those who do not want to or will not be able to stay in academia, we also aim to minimize the harm done to them. We want to change the conversations around academia and our disciplines to emphasize that the system does not work for huge sections of society. Donations to Sportula Europe and similar groups should not be the upper limit to anyone's activism. Anti-racism work and collective action against precarious employment cannot be limited to the academy. Each of our micrograntees has faced significant financial difficulties, but there are many people in our communities who face even harder struggles due to persistent systemic issues and perhaps do not have access to information about organizations such as Sportula Europe because they don't have institutional support in the same way. Sportula Europe and similar initiatives aim to offer a safety net, but our ultimate aim should be to eradicate the disparities in access to and enjoyment of higher education and wider financial security. Classics and classicists cannot remain aloof from the injustices and inequalities of society as a whole. Thank you.